Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. On today's episode, I have got the lovely, wonderful Anne Buckingham. And she is, and I'm going to have to read this because you know Anne, I'm going to forget it, Managing Director of SIS, which is a division of Swarco Smart Charging. Was that all right? Did that work?
That was fantastic. Yeah, great. What an introduction. Thank you. Lovely to see you.
So we met, we kind of spoke, bizarrely enough, while I was in a car park the first time, didn't we, on Teams?
One of our most glamorous meetings.
It was fabulous. But then we actually met face to face at Cenex. Probably it's about 8 weeks ago now. It's a little while, isn't it?
Yeah, beginning of September. It's always a good event, one of my favourites.
No, it was brilliant, honestly, and it was a really hot day. And at the moment, we've just had the cold hit, haven't we? So me and you have just been saying how cold we are at the moment, but hopefully we'll be fine.
Yeah, I think we will. Yeah, if I'm shivering, I'll try and keep my arms down.
Well, you can just start kind of doing some of these kind of exercises just to keep warm.
Yes, we don't need the Macarena at the start of this session.
For those of you watching, there may be an episode of a Macarena separately on this.
Oh dear.
So just to say, so you have been working for Swarco for a little while, haven't you? You were previously the sales director and you've jumped into the MD role now. Yeah. And I was kind of having a look on LinkedIn about what you'd done previously. So you worked for Siemens and SSE Enterprise, and we also talked about the fact that I worked there as well. So I was in Enterprise Telecoms in Reading. But just tell me a little bit about how you got there, about you and, you know, what got you to where you are now, being managing director, and what gives you that kind of fire in your belly on, you know, to get you up and go to work every day?
So in this sector, it's been about 10 years since I've moved over into the EV infrastructure sector. Before that, always sales, always with a sort of L&D sales type focus. But first job was moving over to work for SSE Enterprise. Back in the days when EVs were mostly focused around public funding initiatives, it was innovation projects. So it was a really exciting opportunity. And with, as you know, working with a company like SSE, they had some really aligned business verticals. So you were in telecoms, but they also had a kind of contracting arm to that business and an energy side to that business and a renewables side to that business. They also had a utilities side around asset ownership. So it was a great place to go over and just have a think about EV charging infrastructure, what that might look like in the future and how that might hit the different verticals of the business units that they had at that time. And I mention that in detail because for me that was the beginning of my enthusiasm for this sector for a number of reasons. I think it was brand new. There were some really innovative technologies that we were looking at, and there were 2 or 3 founders, if you like, of the sector, and it was really open and friendly. And you know, being part of a kind of strategic direction sales team, sales isn't always the friendliest of roles within some organisations and some sectors. It can be really competitive. But that's what I love about this sector. And even now, fast forward 10 years on, you've got people with a vested interest in the technology, in sustainability, and there are some really accessible things in there to talk to friends and family around. You know, who doesn't love talking about cars? So yeah, that was SSE. Got to know some people. I moved from there over to working with Siemens Mobility. And again, what a fantastic group of people. I was working in a building with hundreds of engineering profile people, all with a really innovation focused mindset around what technical solutions you can bring to the EV market. And yeah, another fantastic, enthusiastic group of people. So I had some really lucky first roles. And then were delighted to come over and join the Swarco team. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about us as a business. But I guess one of the pieces was looking at the kind of Siemens mobility business at that time was very product focused and exceptionally good product focus. Whereas moving over to the Swarco smart charging business was really looking at that turnkey solution from feasibility and design through to supply, install, operate, service, maintain, and customer service throughout that. So I guess started off with some specialisms, loved the sector. I loved the diversity and the accessibility of the people in this sector, and it made it a really good place to do business. And I think working over at Swarco initially in sales, and something that one of the biggest features of this business, I believe, is our culture, and that enabled me to move from sales up into this MD role, because it recognises the diversity of the teams and the people, and there's a really good opportunity to do some great work. So yeah, really excited to be here.
You're quite, I would say, as an ex kind of the previous sales director, you're quite, you've got quite a different mindset to some people that I've worked with and know, previously, who've gone from sales into kind of the managing director role. It's nice to see it, and like we were talking before we started recording about the people side of Swarco. Let's just start off by talking a little bit about, so you've said, so Swarco offer its turnkey solutions. You're not a charge point operator, are you? You're so much more than that. And Swarco's been around for quite a long time, hasn't it? You kind of, just give everybody a bit of an idea about where Swarco came from and what's kind of what you've developed into.
Yep, absolutely. So Swarco Group, founded in 1969, so over 50 years around as a transport infrastructure group, covering everything from traffic infrastructure through to parking systems. So it's a really diverse portfolio of products. I think for Swarco Smart Charging, were founded 13 years ago, and again, as we discussed, focused on the early days around public charging infrastructure, primarily because that's where the funding was at the early stages for us to get some project experience. So 13 years, and we've had some long-standing, really critical to us partnerships with manufacturing OEMs and some specialist teams that have supported us with installation and design over the years, as we've evolved into having that whole turnkey solution. So we started off, back to the culture piece, we started off 13 years ago with 2 individuals dedicated to Swarco Smart Charging, and now we have about 165, excluding group services, and by the end of this year, beginning of next year, about 200. And I love the fact that both of those 2 individuals that started this business 13 years ago are still here. I think that shows you that kind of family feel. So Swarco is a family-owned, sort of privately owned entity, and you feel that as part of the culture here. And I think that makes a really big difference to the way we operate, the people we attract to come and work with us, and actually the way we deal and work with our customers and partners, which I think is one of the biggest differences about us as a business.
Well, I was going to say, because I had Michael McLeod on, who's now Senior Business Development Manager, isn't he? And actually, that was that. Ah, get the title right, Liz. But no, he was lovely. Say again, sorry.
I can't be nice about Michael in public. Don't make me do that. Yes, don't listen, Michael. He's great.
Yeah, he is lovely. If you look at your customer base, then, so you said about public charging, um, are we looking at the majority of your customers being local authorities?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think along with the evolution of us and the sector, that profile of customers has really changed over time. So in the early days, primarily yes, Swarco have worked with all 32 Scottish local authorities and a sizable proportion of the authorities across England and Wales. And in the early days, that was probably about 70% of the work that we did. We've worked really hard to balance that. I think the ebb and flow of funding has changed over time. I think the fleet electrification projects that we're starting to see come through are changing the profile
Yes.
of what we see and what we do. So before, primarily public sector work, primarily public charging infrastructure. About 70-30, so 70 public, 30 private sector. That's really changed. So now we work across four key segments. So public charging, still a really significant part of what we do, but actually we do a lot of it for private sector organisations. So back to SSE being a company that we both know and love from career history, working with them as an example of one of the charge point operators that we work with. So we work with a lot of CPOs, providing them part of or all of design, supply hardware, install, operate, maintain it, deal with their private support centre. But the other segments are catching up. So fleet is catching up, and for us we kind of break that into different types of fleet. So e-bus, it does what it says on the tin, so bus depot infrastructure, and then e-trucks, so the bigger, heavier commercial trucks and electric vehicles, and then smaller commercial fleets. So that's the kind of two areas that we work in, and then less volume perhaps, but workplace charging infrastructure, which is a really important part of that mix of public, home and workplace. And then we are a B2B organisation, so we don't work with selling domestic chargers, but we do have home chargers, but we have them for return to home fleet charging customers. So to your question, it's changed. So it used to be heavily public sector, public charging. The funding landscape's changed. We'll talk about the zero emission target, but not talk about the zero emission target for the transition to low emission vehicles. But that's incentivising people to spend time and attention on transitioning their fleets. And once people have got a few pilot vehicles in, they see how much they can save in terms of fueling and servicing, and so we're seeing that that's taking over as a significant proportion of what we do. So yeah, a lot of change.
And it's good that organisations, never mind, and we'll try not to talk about what happened recently, but organisations were still pushing the decarbonisation agenda anyway. They were, and they still are, aren't they? So no matter what the decision's been made with regards to the pushback, so what kind of size fleets? Because you're saying you're going from kind of small kind of cars to vans to big trucks. So what size? On average, what numbers of fleets are you kind of talking about at the moment that are coming through?
Yeah, another good question. I think our focus actually has been bus for a lot of our recent projects, which is really exciting. That gives us back to that thing of what gives us the buzz. There's some really exciting new bits of kit, charging infrastructure when it comes into the bus space. So we've done a couple of pantograph charging, e-bus charging projects, which takes us into a new space. And there we're restricted, I guess, around the vehicle volume that service those fleets. So again, anywhere up to kind of 50 chargers to install in an individual depot, depending on the size of the bus fleet that they've got operating out of there. So bus fleets are something that's really exciting because of the technology. I guess for the kind of smaller commercial fleets, in terms of the smaller vehicles, it becomes really exciting because the numbers of those fleets are significantly larger. So into the 50 to 100, low hundreds, and that means that perhaps the individual bits of hardware less exciting, but you're looking at how to bring a sizable point of connection into those depots, how you're going to load manage the power to charge them when they need to be charged, looking at the run-in, run-out profiles of those fleets. So it brings a different kind of technical challenge, and actually that's the stuff that gets us out of bed in the morning to come to work and have a look at.
So do you want, just do me a favour and explain. So you said about pantograph e-charging now. Can you explain what that is? Because I don't know what that is. So I was kind of thinking, do I ask it? Yes, I'm going to ask you.
So sorry.
No. No. It's just a phrase I've not. Obviously, I know e-charging, but pantograph. I'm trying to get to grips with what that actually is.
So you mentioned Michael, and I have a little chuckle at the fact that he and our technical sales manager will both be sitting somewhere going, "Oh God, this should be interesting," as my going to explain the difference of it.
Oh no, sorry.
No, not at all. No, I'm joking. So we talk about the home chargers that everyone knows. So the small AC chargers, usually wall box type chargers, that move up through outputs from 7, 11, 22 kilowatts on the AC side of things.
Yeah.
And then you get into those three-phase supplies with DC chargers. And DC chargers, people are used to seeing now, they tend to go from 25, but 50 kilowatt DC, up to kind of 300, 400 kilowatt DC. And they're a big box with cables coming from them. Pantograph chargers, same thing. You can have hundreds of kilowatts of power modules. So the same power modules that you would see if you safely unlocked a DC charger, and you'd see some proportion of 40 or 50 kilowatt power modules built up inside those. A pantograph charger is the same, large column filled with power modules, and it's got a large overhead arm, and the vehicle drives up, and that arm drops down, connects, and provides a pantograph overarching charging for buses, large bus vehicles, and those vehicles.
Wow. Okay, I get it now. I think I know what you mean. Yes, definitely.
Next time you come to LCV, let's see if we can get one, a model of one of those on the stand. There would be a challenge for our marketing team.
Oh my God, they'd love that, wouldn't they? No, because I mean anything like that. Because obviously people don't realise all of the different vehicles in a fleet that will, you're decarbonising your fleet, so therefore you need to move, over to something. So which is the best decarbonisation version isn't it? It's e-fleets. So actually, there's got to be different ways of managing this. So I suppose I'm assuming this is all still evolving, because of the fact that you'll be having different challenges coming across your bow, as it were, every week. What would you say is the biggest challenge currently then, Anne?
I think almost without exception, most of us would say power, bringing power supply in quickly, in time with a project, into a site. But it's not insurmountable. I think you're right, there are lots of different solutions, and I think a phrase that we hear so often in this sector, probably to the point that it sounds a bit cliched, but it's true, is one size doesn't fit all. It doesn't fit all for individual cars or vehicles as part of a fleet, because everybody's different, every vehicle's demand is different, people's journey are different, fleets are different. Some run 24 hours, some only run during the day and could charge slowly, sharing power overnight. So I think the bit that we thought was going to be a huge challenge at the beginning of the kind of technology discussions was all focused on technology. But we've got we've just talked about some of them. We've got everything from an AC wall box to 400, 500, 600 kilowatt DC chargers and pantograph charging, parts of the sector are looking at things like induction charging. There are lots of different bits of technology, and I think that will continue to evolve. I think the exciting bit is how we look and apply that across the demands of the fleet, be that the UK car fleet or an individual business fleet, because it will be a blend of those things. And if you look at the drivers of a fleet, they cover off almost every segment we've just talked through. So some of them won't have a depot to charge their van. They'll take it home, so they'll have an AC charger at home. Their work depot might be longer than the range of their vehicle, so they're going to need to stop off at a public charging point to charge en route. If they do get to their depot, they're going to be there with their colleagues, so they need to share the power when they're there. So I think it's not one size fits all. Same cliche twice, but it is a blend of that. It's a blend of the places that you charge with the type of charging technology that you use at those places, depending on the type of vehicle, depending on the weight that you've got in that vehicle, depending how far it's got to go and whereabouts you are. So I think the challenge is less in terms of explaining that to people, because I think people, buyers, customers, suppliers, supply chain get that. They get that all of those different pieces of the puzzle come together. I guess we've got some of those conversations in place now around how we help to speed up energising some of the locations where there is going to be a big demand, even if you schedule it and load manage the volume of power that you're pulling into your charging infrastructure. And I think there's probably some way to go with that. Similarly, we were talking a little bit before around the projects that are really exciting, and things that include battery storage or different types of sustainable generation, on-site generation, PV, integrated PV generation, renewable generation. All of those pieces now are the exciting element that we add into the existing charging tech. And I think that's the piece. How do we make sure we get the demand right, we get the power right, we balance that effectively, I think is the exciting part of what we do.
Yeah. It's just ever evolving, isn't it, at the moment? What we've got now, everything you're seeing now, everything that's out there now, in the next kind of 5-10 years, it's going to be probably very, very different, isn't it? And actually it's exciting, isn't it, to be in a sector that is ever evolving, and like I say, I think kind of all the things behind software development and things like that, it's just going to be fantastic. I get quite excited thinking about the way that these things are moving. I don't know whether I hope I know you will do, definitely. Do you know what I mean? It's just really good.
Absolutely, and I think watching the generations that are coming up behind us. So our daughter has just done a master's degree focused on climate change. In my uni or education days, that wouldn't have been something that that would have been quite a specialist type of qualification. I think the other piece around the generations that I see coming up, which is really exciting, is they've got a real view of sustainability. It's not what's next, we're going to throw this away. It's what's next, how will it fit in with the solutions and technology that we've got in place already. So it's a far more sustainable approach. It doesn't feel to me in this sector as though we're talking about technology that's going to come in and put what we've installed today to waste. We're aware that vehicles come in and they've got a legacy of 10 years or so of those vehicles need to be looked after. So I think it's a sustainable look at piecing together what we've got today, some of the legacy infrastructure, to make sure that we're making long-term use of it, and then fitting that in with the new innovation that's coming in. And it is exciting. There's some great areas of research going on at the moment that I think really bode well for us in future years as well.
just the way things move forward is just like you say. I'm really interested, by the way, in the fact that your daughter did a master in climate change, because I don't know whether everybody who listens and watches this, they'll all know, but so my husband is a professor of climate science at Reading University, so actually, and you're right, just kind of seeing that being a topic that people study, that they want, especially youngsters now, they want to talk about it, don't they? I've heard parents and grandparents being asked what they're doing about climate change and what they're doing to decarbonise, because their schools are putting all of this on the curriculum, which is fantastic. So the youngsters now, they're going to be doing jobs that probably have not been invented yet, aren't they? Which is, it's amazing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that something else we talked about before we started was a kind of focus on teams and diversity, and I think getting that age diversity into a team, as well as all the other really important aspects of a diverse team, is really interesting, because there's just a completely different perspective. If I think about my weekend past, I love to go shopping. I hate to stereotype myself, but it's just something that I really enjoy doing. But again, same daughter, she's charity shopping, she's going to car boot sales, she's really excited at finding, bits of clothing that she can refresh and regenerate into something that's completely different mindset. So it is, it's exciting. It's really important we get those perspectives when we're looking at the technology choices that we're recommending into projects as well. Back to that, it isn't about ripping everything out. We don't want customers to be put off of investing now because they think, wow, it's a rapid state of change and this could be something really different in a few years' time, so maybe we'll just hold off. It's really important that we look at including some of the legacy infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's like you say, it's ongoing, it's evolving, but it doesn't mean that we should stop and wait, like you said. I know there are a lot of local authorities, for example, have declared climate emergencies, and they're really in on kind of making a difference in their local area. There are some that haven't, but whether that's because they want to stay kind of where they are currently, and just because they're worried about the move forwards, or or whatever, but yeah, this is going to evolve. It's going to evolve into something fantastic for people moving forwards. When we're gone, I don't want to be morbid and all that, but do you know what I mean? It is, isn't it?
Yeah, completely agree. And I think there are some things that you don't realise that probably are. Your worldview is influenced by the generation that you grew up in, as well as the place that you grew up in. And the fact that I kind of grew up in the southeast, rural, English countryside, I'm used to thinking that public transport's not going to be great. I'm used to thinking it's worth investing in my own electric car and finding a sustainable way to travel about, because I'm never going to be able to get a bus or a train. But we need to get those things developing and evolving in tandem, because it is improving. The younger generation are looking, questioning whether they even want to buy a car, and that's
exactly. Yeah, and look at us now. Probably. I mean, how long have podcasts been around, and how long? We'd normally be having a meeting if we were going to have a chat or something like that. We'd be meeting face to face, wouldn't we? And actually, for everything that came out of the COVID and the whole pandemic, it means that you can reach people more remotely. So you've got that. Do you really need to have one car, two cars, any cars at all? Because if the infrastructure for kind of everything else is working appropriately, then hopefully we're kind of going to reduce. But we still need it. We still need infrastructure networks, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an exciting concept.
Yeah, exactly. So I was going to. Do you know what I wanted to bring up? What we were talking about before we start recording, and you touched on it a little while ago, which was the person that you are in relation to people and inclusion and diversity, and the way that you've brought that into Swarco, and you've kind of you're sort of you're growing this evolving. I'm using the word evolving a lot, aren't I? But you're growing this culture of kind of diversity, and like I say, as an MD, that's sometimes that doesn't always happen, does it? So talk to me about what you're doing with regards to diversity, why it's important to you, because it feels to me like it's really important to you from what you've talked to me about.
100% it is. I think, this is not something that I've come to Swarco and said we need to do something about diversity. I think this is something that Swarco's culture attracted me to join it because it was accessible. It's an environment where people feel welcome. It doesn't feel hostile or cold. It's an opportunity to come and join a business that are interested in diverse groups joining. But you're right, it's a really important focus of mine for all sorts of reasons. Not least from a sales perspective or from a business customer perspective, is that our customer base is diverse. You can't have one type of person in a business trying to or expecting to be able to communicate in the way that a diverse range of customers want to be communicated with. We were chuckling about my technical abilities as I was connecting to the podcast link, and in the same way that I was when I launched into my description of a pantograph. Now, although technically aware of the solutions and the products, it's not my driving part of my profile. And we will deal with engineering director customers, we will deal with lots of technical teams, but we will also deal with people like me, people that work in businesses, business owners, entrepreneurs, people with a commercial focus, really different types of people. And therefore, to be successful as a business and to encourage those customers to talk to us so that we get their perspective in what we design as a proposition and a service, we have to be able to engage with them. We have to reflect their profile in our teams, and we see so much better output and performance for that. And again, I know we joked about it before the meeting, but maybe 10 years or so ago when I came into this space, sales in this transport infrastructure sector wasn't where you saw too many women. Some upsides to that. Our old sales conferences, you could definitely get to the toilet quicker than you can now in terms of there not being a queue. But in terms of getting the diversity of people in our teams so that we know that we're talking to our customers and hearing our customers, and they're wanting to share that input with us, we needed to do something about that. And we sat around the table last week in our leadership team meeting, and in a leadership profile of 9 people, 7 of those were women. And that's not because we positively discriminate when we recruit, that's because we promote professional, strong candidates from within, and we make sure that we work really hard to identify a range of people to bring them into interview. And I get it, it's not easy, but it's really important that when we're interviewing people, we've got a couple of profiles of people in the room, so that we've got somebody who's more engineering focused, somebody who's more people focused, we've got a bit of age diversity, so that we are welcoming and relaxing to the candidates that come in and talk to us. I think it's really important. It's something I feel quite strongly and passionately about, for the success of the business and for the way we communicate and operate in the marketplace.
That's brilliant. That's because I always say, and the phrase is, isn't it? People buy from people,
Yeah.
and actually, you want to have a team that work with you that others will want to buy from, or will want to, kind of have a have a conversation with, because actually, doesn't matter who you are in your business, there will be, that obviously there will be conversations that are going on all over the place, and you want to have good communicators there. You want to have a diverse, number of people working for you, don't you? And like you say, that kind of the profile of that person and the way that they are with everybody else is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, and customers that they've got a question they want to ask about a product that you're talking to them about. They don't want to feel daft or stupid. They want to see people like them that don't have that technical knowledge. It's not their profile. They want somebody to be able to explain it in a way that they're going to be able to hear it, and they want to be able to ask it without feeling daft. It just improves the way we talk to each other, and we talk to our customers.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to ask you just to talk through, because we talked about this very briefly, didn't we, before we started recording, about Transport Scotland and your customer support. So, because that was really interesting, obviously, because I've been on the other side of it a long time ago, kind of like I said to you, in parking technology and building management systems. But why is that important for you to actually have that, because you said you've got 50 people in customer support? What's the importance of that? What does it do for your customers?
I think it's really important for us, I think, and therefore our customers. I think the way that we deal with drivers or host owners or depot managers when they've got a challenge with their infrastructure, or they want to talk to somebody about their infrastructure, or they're at a charger and they're looking at it thinking, how do I make this work? It needs to be immediately available, not just when we want to provide that service. It needs to be a profile of people the other end of the phone that can talk to those people that are running a bus depot, so people that understand the infrastructure installed, but also those people that might have hired an electric car for the first time, driven up to a charger because their car's directed to it, and looking at it thinking, well, what do I do now? So I think that's something that we learn as a business, and I think our sector's experienced over the last decade or so, is we started off with the people that answered the phones to help with drivers were our technical support team. So qualified engineers answering the phone, because those are the people that would be able to identify what's wrong with the charger. We realised really quickly, especially when we went from depots to public charging, that one of our technical engineers talking to the person that has first time they're trying to charge their car and they're going, well, hold on, I can't find a charging socket. An engineer probably isn't the right profile of person answering that call. So we evolved from our own technical support engineers to triaging, but having those first people that answer the phone call being customer service focused people that are used to being able to relax and ask questions of the people calling in to understand what it is they really need before passing them through to technical support. Because sometimes it's a case of, I can't find the charging socket on this car. How do I get a charge? And those teams are trained to deal with those calls sensitively without making people feel silly, and say, actually, you're right. It isn't easy the first time. You probably just need to push that piece where the lights are at the back of the car, open up, so whichever vehicle they're driving, talk them through it. And that's been a real lesson for us. So dealing with the Customer Support Centre for Transport Scotland has been an absolutely fantastic opportunity for us. We've expanded, because of the volume of support that we give on that network, we've expanded the number of people that we've got in that team. As you mentioned, Liz, we've got 50 individuals that work in shifts 24/7 to make sure that they're there for when drivers need us to provide support rather than office hours. And we've been used to the real diversity of people that use those chargers. Diversity in terms of geography, the vehicles they're driving, the places they've arrived to drive, their experience or lack of experience with those vehicles and the charging infrastructure. So we've learnt a lot from that experience over the last few years, and it's a really critical service, I think, for us to offer out to others.
Yeah, for sure. I just, yeah, actually having somebody at the end of a phone that you can talk to that isn't going to patronise you when you're not sure. I mean, I'm quite a new EV driver myself. We've had our EV 2 or 3 months. You know, there are occasions where you kind of go, oh God, now what do I do? You know, and actually, but it's a learning curve for everybody, isn't it? Really.
It is. I mean, I've hired electric vehicles. I've been an electric vehicle driver for years now, but I've hired electric vehicles of brands and models that I've not known before. I think you get to a charger, it's the same thing. There are, this sector's got some great new participants in it, but that means that chargers look different. They are different types, different connectors, different methods of accessing them, and having somebody that you can just phone through and they support you to work through that without, as you say, making you feel silly, but also just that knowledge is really important. It gets people the confidence to jump in a new electric vehicle, drive it to a new charger somewhere, knowing that they're going to get some support to help them. And sometimes, things do go wrong. So sometimes it isn't, I don't know how to charge this vehicle. Sometimes I've arrived at this charger and the lights aren't on. Can you help? And the answer is often yes, but if it isn't yes, you've then got somebody on the phone saying, but I can see where your next charger is. How much charge have you got left in your vehicle? How many miles have you got to go? I can see where you can go as an alternative. So it's just making sure that we're making drivers feel safe and keeping them moving.
Yeah. And that is the most, out of all of it, that is the most important thing, isn't it? It's actually having that ability to be able to support that person at the end of that phone, because they might be freaking out a little bit. They might have, kind of a bit of range anxiety kind of kicking in. So actually making sure that they know that, they know where the next charger is and they can help them find it, etc. So it makes a massive difference. I was going to ask you, how do you feel we can ensure, and this is a bit of a curveball today, but how do you feel that we can ensure that more people buy an EV? What are your thoughts? Because actually, for us to decarbonise properly and get people to recognise that EVs are the way to go, and actually we've got to remember the fact that we've had all of this negative, I always talk about this, all this negative press that's kind of been around for so many months, with somebody with a target on our, on the EV and EV charging's back. What do you feel? You've kind of said to me now about, about the kind of the service that you're providing, in customer support. But that's once somebody's got an EV, isn't it? It's once they've got it in the fleet, or they, what can we do? Because there's a million EV drivers now, aren't there? What can we do to kind of kick it all out and get everybody to just see how this is this is a good thing to do?
I think there are a couple of things. I think you mentioned one of them there. I think the negative press, or the at the very least lack of quality, accurate reporting and media coverage on the sector, I think that's one thing. I think the sector and the people in it, including you, Liz, are doing a lot to manage that and to counter that. I see loads of people within our sector coming out and doing myth-busting sessions on, yes, you can drive your EV in the rain, and no, they don't all look like milk floats, all of those things, those bizarre conversations that you have to counteract that. And I think, I hope that the mainstream media catches up, because they're having an unnecessarily detrimental effect on take-up. I think we're always going to have doubters. There's always those people at either end of the curve that are either going to be enthusiasts or doubters, and some of those it may take a lot longer for them to come along. But I think accurate comms from the media is the very least we should be able to ask for. And as a sector, the people that get out and engage and show people the vehicles, because I think that's the best way to convince them. Get in a vehicle. I also always used to love my cars, my petrol cars. Was never quite sure about EVs back in the early days, but the best way, the way that I was convinced to kind of buy into them, was somebody saying, let me take you out in this one, let me show you how it works. And again, I love driving. The first time you get in an EV, if you love driving cars, the way they accelerate, you're almost instantly bitten by the bug, if that's your thing. If you are somebody who is, very sensible around cost, to actually demonstrate the total cost of ownership of an EV, those people, once they experience it, will buy into it. The fact that you can charge your car up to 320, 350 miles for £20 on a public charging network, even the toughest of buyers will say, actually, this is starting to make sense. Let me actually calculate the original purchase price, considering that, looking at the lack of service costs. So financially it makes sense. Driving experience, I think it makes sense. Environmentally, it makes sense. I think we just need to get out there with more events and give people the chance to get into the cars and experience them. We need to give more demonstrators. There's some fantastic new events in the sector. People that we've been seeing and joining at events over lots of years. We talked about meeting at Cenex's LCV event. There are lots of those with the Green Fleet events and the fully charged events, where you're now seeing a higher proportion of the general public coming in and people that buy the fleet vehicles for their organisations coming in. And we just need to do more of that. I think those of us that are a little bit closer to home with the sector, we know that the kit's there. We know that the costs and the financials work out beneficially. We know that the infrastructure's there. We just need to get out and convince others of the same. And I think that's the task.
I was going to say, I've spoken to quite a few people lately, and some people, it's like somebody who I know quite well was kind of saying, I talked about one issue that I had with the charger, but all of the other issues were absolutely fine. Sorry, not issues. All of the other chargers that I had were fine, and that one issue was like, well, you're saying that the charging network's not working. I went, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm basically saying that it's working. You just have to work within, there's certain things. So for example, if you are on a main trunk road like the M1, you've got to recognise that there are lots and lots of cars on that trunk road on the M1. So if you choose a charge point that actually there's not many of them, it's possible you might have to wait. But if you choose one that's 4 or 5 miles away from the main trunk road, then you're probably going to be absolutely fine. So it's things like that, and it's, I think it's just, we were forced to, I always come back to the pandemic, we were forced to change our behaviour during the pandemic, weren't we? And that's all this is. It's just a change of behaviour.
Yeah,
just
agreed.
Doing things differently.
And I think, for a while, the early adopters and the people, 4, 5, 6 years ago that were trialling EVs, it was harder work. The profile of those people was that they were interested in the technology or the environmental impacts and benefits, so they would try. But today, some of those people that say, oh, do you know what, this just drives me mad, I'm going to have to stop and charge all the time, it's just not a thing anymore. For those profile of drivers, you will need to stop. But again, another cliche, I don't know if it's just a cliche for us that are in this sector, so we hear it all the time, but you're more likely to need to stop on a long journey because you need to stretch your legs or find a toilet or find a shop to buy something. You are to go, oh, I'm going to have to stop because my car's not going to make it. So it's changed. And if you are old school, and I happily represent the older generation, if you are old school, You can drive to a petrol forecourt now, and there's likely to be an EV charging area, or there's likely to be a forecourt that's been completely transitioned to an EV charging forecourt. So if you want to stay stuck in your ways, there's still a way for you to do this, because the businesses are starting to design infrastructure for everybody. So you can stick with, I'm going to go and charge at a forecourt. I'm not going to install one on my house. I'm not going to go and plug into a charger when I go to the cinema, because I've not had to do that before. You don't have to join in with it if you don't want to. You can still successfully convert to an EV. I think that's where we're at in this stage of the market.
But then it's also getting them to recognise that actually how many, you can't take a petrol car, you can't do it, you can't fill up a petrol car or a diesel car with petrol at your house, at the gym, at the cinema, unless you're kind of local to a hotel with a petrol station nearby. I can park up in Nuneaton, where I've been travelling to every week, and I can park up at the hotel, and there's a charger there. I can either put it on charge for a few hours on a 7 kilowatt, or I can actually put it on the rapid charger, the 50 kilowatt that's there. So you can't do that with a petrol car or a diesel car. It is a different way of thinking, but they are more accessible. But we're going to be banging on about. I'm getting on my orange box. I said to you, sometimes I get like this. I'll be on my orange box about this. But listen. I'm going to finish off by getting you to actually, if people want to find out more about Swarco, what do they need? Where do they need to go? Do we point them to the website? What about talking to you? Where would they find you, and where would they find Swarco?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, on the website, but I think it's easier and we're more accessible if you find us through social media. So if you're on LinkedIn, it's the best way to find myself, the other leaders in the business, Michael and the sales team, and just search for Swarco Smart Charging. We'll always pick up and respond to those, but otherwise, of course, reach out on our website. But I think social media's profiles are easier, and we'd love to talk to you. Of course, Michael's going to want to talk to you about selling infrastructure and talking about what we can do. But actually, as a business, we're also really interested in talking to people about the sector. So give us a shout, reach out. We'd be delighted to talk some more.
No, brilliant. So that's swarco.com, isn't it? And I'll share all the social links and stuff on the podcast when it goes live. So yeah. But Anne, it's been wonderful talking to you. I've really, really enjoyed it. You're doing a really, it's great to meet such a people person as well at the top of the business. So thank you for taking your time out to talk to me on this.
Hey, thank you, Liz. It's been an absolute pleasure to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, and to everybody else, I'm going to say, see you next time. Bye-bye. You've been watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon, and you'll receive all of our weekly videos. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.